those sweet, sweet vocal stylings, and really all the lyrics and all of the music are by Ashley Minnie. Thank you so very much for putting together the theme song for the relaunch of the podcast. It just brings me so much joy every time I listen to it. So thank you so very much. All right. Welcome to Crafting a Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman, and I am your host. Every Wednesday and Friday, I bring you interviews with female and non-binary makers from all over the world doing making of all different kinds. Today's guest is Lisa Laughy, who is a wood carver and also illustrator. She's actually been an illustrator for much longer than she's been a wood carver, but they both influence each other very much so. So really interesting getting to hear about her journey into both and her ongoing relationship with both. So great conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. Before we hop into the interview with Lisa, though, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Annette of 513 Woodworks, Katie Thompson of Women of Woodworking, Kevin, Lefty's Workshop, Christy, Twisted Twine, Jeremy Speece, Sammy, Go Sammy Lee, Sven, Dwarf Sized Workshop, Rachel, Moody Makes, Bonnie, Tool Mom Bonnie, toolmomstore.com, Laura, Oakley Soap Company, Mary Lou, Made by Mary Lou, Brandy, Studio Obey, Lee, The Rainbow Carver, Ellen, Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all so very much for your continued and ongoing support, helping me to produce 2 episodes a week every week. If you would like to get your name added to this list, become a part of the Hardcore Revolution Pod Squad, you certainly can. Just head on over to patreon.com/crafting a revolution, and you can join up over there. I do need to let you guys know, since the podcast name has changed to Crafting a Revolution, and we now have new logo art and that new fabulous theme song, that means there will be new stickers and new t-shirts coming out as soon as I can get on it. Part of the reason I starting to mention it at the start of the episodes, is so that I don't forget. But that means anyone who's in the $3 a month and up tier will get a new sticker coming your way, even if you've been a patron for a long time. And anybody who's in the $5 a month tier and up will be getting a new t-shirt once those come out with the new logo work on it. So look for that coming up in the near future. All right, let's get on into the interview with Lisa. So Lisa, I do like to start by asking my guests to introduce themselves. So would you do that for me?
Okay, my name is Lisa Laughy. I live in central New Hampshire. I've lived in New Hampshire my whole life. And I'm a wood carver, and I'm also a painter and illustrator. So a wide range of things.
Okay.
What other kind of things would you like to know about me?
Well, I start with a pretty broad question, which is I really just want to kind of know the story of you, like, where you grew up, to like, how did you get into being a carver and an illustrator?
Okay, well, so I grew up probably about 30 miles from where I live now. I've lived in central New Hampshire. I also spent about 20 years living way up north in the woods in New Hampshire. So I grew up in Tilton, and I graduated from high school in a town called Plymouth, which is a little further north. And I also went to college at Plymouth State, which had a newish BFA program when I was a student there that I was part of. So when I was at Plymouth State, I studied printmaking, and part of that process was learning woodblock printing. Mm-hmm. And after I graduated, I didn't have access to like those big presses that we had at school. And so I dabbled around in some linoleum printing and some wood block printing. And at some point I was like, I just want to carve the blocks. I just want to do the carving. So that's pretty much how I made the transition. But I didn't really start carving till probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, sort of just playing around, but seriously getting into carving and like buying some professional tools. That didn't start till probably about 15 years ago.
Okay. And you're doing all like hand carving with like chisels?
Yeah, I don't use much in the way of power tools. I've never really liked power tools.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the noise, and I don't like the dust, dealing with the dust. And so I have a bandsaw that I use usually, like to cut, if I have a shaped carving, to cut that out. And that's pretty much it. Sometimes I will use a router to like set a level in a carving. Like if the carving is raised, then I'll take out the background with a router, just because that's so much easier to get everything, and saves a huge amount of time to kind of hog out all of that background stuff. But from that point on, I use hand tools. I use traditional hand tools. And I really enjoy the process, sort of the quietness of it, and the I don't know, just it's one of the things that really drew me to hand carving initially, was that it was something that I could do for 10 minutes when I had 10 minutes. I could pick up where I left off, work for 10 minutes. And also that I could work for a little longer, and really found it quite relaxing. I was an illustrator for many years prior to carving, and I did these very intricate Celtic designs that one small painting would take, 40 or 50 hours of my time. It was really detailed and really intense. And coming to the carving was just sort of like an exhale from that process. And I also found that a lot of the design work that I had done as an illustrator, I had thought about what I was drawing like it was a relief. I don't know if that makes much sense.
It makes total
describing
sense
it that way,
yeah,
but in my mind, I conceived of it as a relief. And so I would look at one of those designs and think, oh, I can carve that. And, sometimes I still will do a painting, and I'll get done with the painting and think, yeah, I really want that to be carving too. So so I explored kind of both of those things in very different ways.
And so I just wanted to make sure I copied so far. So your BFA was in printmaking?
Yes.
Specific, okay.
Yes.
As an illustrator, is that like what you did work-wise? And was it for yourself or for others?
I spent about 10 years being self-employed, and I did a little bit of everything, but some of that was I did some licensing of artwork. I designed some greeting cards, small projects like that. And then later on, I decided I needed some health insurance. So I got a full-time job. I had worked in libraries. I'd had part-time jobs in public libraries in a couple of spots. And I got a full-time job working in an academic high school library. And I did that for almost 14 years. I was a systems librarian, which is like library technology, the catalog and all that kind of super nerdy stuff. And A couple of months ago, I got laid off from that job. I lost that job. And so now I'm looking at the potential of going back to that sort of self-employed state of being while I explore some other opportunities. And so I'm super excited to have the time to carve now that I haven't had before. And also I'm working on several illustration projects too. So
Okay. Were you into like art and creating as a kid?
oh, definitely. Yeah. Like drawing was like my first language. I have an older sister. She's 5 years older, and she taught me how to draw as soon as I could hold a crayon. And I spent an enormous amount of time as a kid with coloring books and drawing. I had the big box of Crayola, and I started seeing myself as an artist very young, I think. And I can remember being in like grade school, and my friends wanted me to like draw me a cat, just like kind of like a, the entertainment value of it. Um, and that just sort of deepened as I got into high school. And I've always been interested in telling stories visually with my work. So that's how I've been drawn to doing illustration. So I think it's pretty safe to say that like I've always seen myself as a creative person first. And the jobs that I've had, I've enjoyed, and those have been good things, but it never really felt like that was who I was, because particularly like when you work in libraries, I mean, because librarian is something that like that's what people identify as. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's what I do. But I definitely identify as this other creative person. And I've always, even when I worked full time, worked towards keeping my creative skills on a professional level, pursuing opportunities and trying to show work, and just making sure that even though that wasn't where I had the most time, that I was able to grow as a creative person.
Hey makers. So today's podcast episode is sponsored in part by Alicia Van Osdal, who is the owner of Basil Blue Design Company. Alicia is a maker of all things, really. Her focus is on beautiful craftsmanship through woodworking, repurposing, refinishing, art, and sculpture. Her background includes 30 years of graphic design, logos, and branding. If you have an idea or concept and need a creative solution or graphic design, you can email Alicia directly at Alicia, and that is ALICIA at basilblue.com. Or you can visit her website at www.basilblue.com. And fun fact, Alicia actually designed the logo for Crafting Revolution. So that is an example of the impeccable work you can expect if that is something you are in the market for. So be sure to look up Alicia again at her website, basilblue.com. All right, let's get back into the action. Yeah, so I mean, I guess talk to me a little bit about that. Like, how have you approached that, finding ways to show your work or, finding an audience for your work?
Well, it's an ongoing process. It's probably one of the biggest struggles that creative people face. Um, and I think probably it depends too on where you live in the country, or or more urban place, but there've been some art organizations in the state that have been helpful. I became a jury member of the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen with the wood carving. And so they provide opportunities to show work, and they have galleries to sell work in. So things like that are hugely important. There's also a statewide organization that's very active, the Guild of New Hampshire Woodworkers. And that's a fantastic organization, because that's where people just come together and share information about how to do their craft. And I mean, it's just kind of a constant process of finding places that are interested in showing your work. I when I was younger, as a, with my work on paper, I put more effort into shows that were juried shows in other part of the country, and I don't do that as much now, because that takes a lot of work, and it's kind of expensive too, framing, shipping, and I just it's just was one of those things that I kind of cycled through, and I'm more interested in making connections locally, and finding places that are a good match for the kind of work that I do. So
yeah, I feel like that to me is the constant struggle, finding the place that's like a good match and can support the clientele that would be interested in my work.
Yeah, it's great. People love to look at creative work. That's not the hard part. The hard part is connecting with the people that want to own it, to want to live with it.
Right. Yeah.
So that's, when you figure that out, let me know.
And vice versa when you figure
it
out. What do you think, like, are both, is illustration and wood carving like equal loves, or do you feel like you love one more than the other?
Well, that's like saying who's your favorite child. It's not really a fair question, but I would say it's fairly equal. And I would also say that that it depends on what I'm going through, how I'm feeling about certain things. And sometimes the way to express those things are better for wood carving, and sometimes they're not. So I am interested in trying to kind of like bring them together. And I've done a few things that I feel kind of sort of do, but I'm still working on that kind of integration. But at the same time, I also feel like they're fine being separate too, it's the thing is that the way that I feel about painting and color is it feeds more of a need. It's like that experience of putting paint to paper in watercolor, of mixing color, of combining colors in the same painting. Just the process is so visceral and just so good for me. And carving is more about it's more physical, and it's more about sort of figuring things out. Excuse me. So it kind of just depends on where I'm at, and how I'm feeling. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, I will say I've like dabbled in all kinds of different mediums, messy, and there's plenty that I enjoy working with, but I definitely tend to fall. I definitely feel like I have a full on love affair with wood specifically as a medium. And so I tend to maybe more so do different techniques with wood, specifically depending on how I'm feeling. Whether it's going to be more focused on the art comes from the finish technique, because I tend to use, or I do use a lot of dyes to bring really bright colors to my work. And so like that may be the focus of that project, because that's where I need to be at that time. And that's where my creativity is, versus maybe my creativity is in trying to get a certain texture or shape through power carving. Like it just depends on the mood. So I totally understand that.
Yeah. And they're very different processes.
Yeah.
So and it's also the kind of things that are hard to describe.
Yep.
So, but I do have, a real connection to working with wood as a medium. There's nothing quite like it, and I couldn't give up either of them,
Right.
So
yeah.
So I guess I have no favorite child.
Do you going into print making in school and then like illustrations, I feel like that's probably been maybe more historically, quote unquote, okay for women to take up that space.
Yes.
Versus carving or any sort of woodworking.
Yes. And so I will say that definitely is one of the big reasons why that's the direction that I went when I was in school. Absolutely. I wish it hadn't been that way. I wish I could have been comfortable making a start working in wood then. But it was also something that I couldn't like escape either. I
right.
I kept coming back around to it. So I am amazed at how many opportunities there are now for younger women, younger than me, certainly, younger women to naturally just explore that without the same kind of hurdles that were there. And I think I mean, it's a hard thing to describe even, I think, because things are so different now. But that is definitely has been a factor in how my creative work has evolved over years.
And I would say, I mean, kind of like you brought up before, I think the level of hurdle depends on, again, like where you are in the country, at least in the US. Even in larger city art programs, there still is a drastic difference between the level of the number of women versus the number of men, who are going into furniture or sculpture or wood working.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and even that can come down to even just like one faculty member can
Right.
make that, like positively or negatively.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
Yep. I mean, I guess can you tell me more about like what that hurdle was for you? Like, was what made it seem like not the place for you?
Well, I mean, without going into a lot of detail, I mean, it had to do with harassment. And so it was clear to me that that wasn't a direction that I wanted to follow. It was like, am I going to, put myself in a bad spot
Mm-hmm.
or not? And, when you're young, when you're 18 years
Right.
old, it's like, you don't have the same kind of resources. Like looking back, I think, if that were to happen today, it would be very different. But and it just is, I mean, visibility is another factor. It's like I just didn't see any other women being taken seriously.
Yeah.
As woodworkers.
Yeah.
And
I think
and
that's
now they're everywhere,
yeah.
and
I think that's the benefit of social media too, is even though now, even if you don't see another female woodworker like in your area, like with social media out there, you can find them. Like it doesn't have to be physically taking up the same space as you.
Right, exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, and even around here, like now, there's a real growth in maker spaces around here.
Mm-hmm.
And which is, a little behind the times, but it's finally got here, and now it's happening, and that's going to make a huge difference for a whole generation of young people to have access to seeing a wide range of people creating a wide range of things and having the space to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
So,
do you feel like there's been any hurdles like in your professional career as you've kind of worked your way back to wood? Have you seen any hurdles, or do you feel like once you're in the professional world, it evens out a little bit?
well, for one example is, I think for me, probably the most challenging thing was to be taken seriously at the lumberyard.
Mm.
It was like I had to go several times and be pretty much ignored, and until I don't know. I guess I guess it was a rite of passage.
Yeah.
It was. Well, I guess she's not going to go away. She's going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
I'll find what she's looking for. That, and I knew what a 4/4 board was.
Yeah.
And that was like, the magical thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was fine. And so it's like, there's all that kind of stuff, but also, it helped me. I think one of the big things about being a jury member of the league was that it gave me an opportunity to put together a body of work. I brought it in. I had to be juried by 4 of the top wood carving, woodworking craftspeople, in the state. people that I knew of and whose work I was in awe of were going to judge my work. So it was intimidating, but it was also that there's a mentoring aspect to that process. So being, having gone through that process and being a jury member also gives me a little credibility as far as, people taking me seriously for what I do. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
yeah.
I mean, other than like the general hurdles that women everywhere face, like not being able to go places alone and not being welcome in dominantly male spaces, things like that. Being, someone who presents as gay as well as is gay. So, those are just the general day-to-day sort of way that you move through the world.
Yeah.
That expand outward into, with the woodworking world.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Hey, Pod Squad. So I've got a really fun announcement for you. There is a online festival that is coming up. It is called the Empowered Makers Online Festival. It's a totally free DIY party designed to inspire, empower, and educate so that you can stop that Pinterest scroll and be the powerhouse DIYing woman that you're totally capable of being. During this 4-day online event, you'll hear exclusive presentations from 12 incredible women, DIYers, and craftswomen such as myself, covering topics like beginner electrical work, how to flip furniture, making time for DIY, and so much more. So if you're ready to stop just dreaming about DIY and start taking some big freaking action, join us from September 27th through 30th for the Empowered Makers Online Festival. Cannot wait to see what you're going to create after joining this event. So in order to get registered for it, you can head on over to empoweredmakers.com/revolution. All right. And I will be one of the people doing a presentation there talking about how power tools empower. So I hope to see many, many of you over there. Again, you can go to empoweredmakers.com/revolution to get registered for that 4-day online event. It's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. All right, let's hop right back on into the episode. Were you nervous or hesitant to put together that body of work to go through the jury process?
Yes, I mean, it was very intimidating. And there's a furniture maker, but New Hampshire's unique in a couple of ways. And one is that the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen is one of the oldest professional crafts organization in the country. It was one of the first ones to get started. And sort of what there was a New Hampshire Furniture Masters that was an outgrowth kind of that. There were these furniture makers that had their own particular professional needs from an organization. So they started another. So it's sort of like a super duper jury process that they have to go through. And so one of the furniture masters, a man named David Lamb, if you look him up, you can see just like unbelievable work that he does. And about a week before the jurying process, I found out he was going to be on the jury, and I, could hardly even sleep thinking about it. So, but it was a really helpful process, and I got in, and it was like, so, so that has a lot of value just going through that to kind of say, all right, you know, I am this person, I am this Carver, and it's, you know, it was really nerve-wracking, but it was a really positive process.
Mm-hmm. Can I know that there's probably, you know, people who are going to listen to this episode who don't know about like a jury process. Would you care to just explain a little bit more, like what at least your process was for it?
Well, for this, so the league has like a bunch of different categories of craftspeople, and so this fell under wood, which is kind of, you know, would be, you know, bowl turners, furniture makers, and wood carvers. So I had they have a director of standards who upholds the professional level of work. And so they have some criteria, some basic criteria that all league members follow. But there were, so there was that standards director and 3 other craftspeople. One was a turner, 2 were furniture makers, but one was a furniture maker with that mostly made like carved things, and a lot of carving in the furniture. And those people, in order to be a juror, they have them, they are on a special committee in the organization that trains them to be jurors. So you've got those 4 folks, and I went into a room. I had I'm trying to remember, probably 6 or 8 pieces that I brought with me, and you know, put the work down. They asked me a number of questions about a number of things, and then I left the room and went and sort of chewed my guts out in the other room. and I came back in. They asked me a few more questions, and then they told me that that I was in, and that sometimes they do like a 3-month trial period where you have to submit each piece that you say. If I wanted to put a piece in a gallery, I would have had to submit to that jury and have it looked at, and they said that they decided that I didn't need to do that. So that was like a really big sort of plus for me. It was a huge confidence boost, because it's like you know, you're kind of working at home alone, and you don't have a lot of feedback, and so that really brought a lot of things together for me for the carving process. So sometimes they might say, you know, we see what you're doing here, and has a lot of promise. They would sort of offer some suggestions on what you could do to improve your work. We'd really like to see it if, you know, let's say the back of your carving didn't look so rough, you know, or some things like that. They might make suggestions and have you come back, things like that. So it's not just, it wasn't just all about being judgy. It was like also about being a nurturing and supportive process. So
yeah. Did you expect the outcome you got?
I tried to go into it without a lot of expectation. I was pleased that the feedback that I did get was better than I was expecting. I thought I'd probably be coming back for a second round, and so I was pleased that I didn't have to do that, but also that like I also didn't have to continue to submit my work. The trial period. So it was much better than I think I anticipated. But I worked for months and months and months to put that together. It was a big focus of my time and energy. But I mean, it was definitely worth doing. I mean, I think all craftspeople, no matter what they do, even if they're just at, selling their stuff at a craft show, it's like they need the feedback of people around them, to see how people are responding to what they do. So.
Yeah. Did you go through a period, I guess, like that with your illustration work as well, like where you
Well, so
like had doubt at all on your skill level?
Well, so the big thing that I did with my illustration was I had designed a small line of greeting cards. And I went to the National Stationery Show in New York City. I was much younger when I did that. So that probably served the same kind of thing. That was kind of a big deal show. It was a big wholesale show, but it was also a place where people came looking for artwork to license. I was able to wholesale the cards. I got a lot of feedback from people. I got a couple of licensing gigs from that show. So it was a kind of a kickstart to doing that. But that said, like a lot of the stuff that I was doing was sort of blind submissions. So it was just like constant rejection. You just you
get used to it, right?
Yeah. They either ignore you outright or you get like a rejection notice from them. So I also at that time that was when I was doing more like gallery shows and stuff, which it was less rejection, was more positive feedback from people when you have openings and things like that. So I don't know. It's all just been like a process.
Yeah.
It all just gets thrown into the pot, and somehow, you still feel like you can try again. So.
Hey makers, today's episode is sponsored in part by toolmomstore.com. At toolmomstore.com, you can find any and all tool-based merchandise for all genders, all sizes. They've got mugs, they've got shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of the shirts myself that has the hashtag woodworkher on it. And I also have a couple of the mugs that define what and who is a tool chick. So super excited with the merchandise that I have. I know that you will be satisfied as well. And also great discount for those of you who listen to the podcast. At checkout, if you enter the code MAKERMOM, you will get a 20% discount off any of the merchandise that you buy. So that's just toolmomstore.com. All right, let's head back into the action. So to me, it's kind of like, if you keep going back for more, I got to know what's the upside or the benefit of constantly going through that process.
What's the upside?
Yeah.
I recently made a carving of a green man, which is kind of like the stock and trade of wood carvers is green men. But I had done some reading, some research about it, and honestly, like when I took a medieval art history class in college, and the first time I saw that, I'm like, that's a dead guy with leaves coming out of his mouth. Do you know what I mean? It was like my initial response was like, not like the sort of green celebration of life, which is a wonderful symbol.
Right.
But I had this very different response to it. So I had done some research, and I seen a picture of an early medieval green man carving from England, and clearly it was a skull of a head. You know, it was not like that vibrant life.
Right.
And I'm like, that's the one for me. And so I based on that design, I designed a green man carving that has this skull type head in the middle with the leaves growing out of its mouth. And I loved doing it. I mean, it was like everything about it. I enjoyed doing it. And because because my house is absolutely chock full of artwork, it's like, I gotta sell this stuff. I gotta get it out of here.
Right.
And then I sat down to take pictures of it and list it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so strange. Nobody is going to want this thing. Nobody. This is just, you know, I followed this sort of blissful little path, and I got to the end, and then the reality hit, and I thought, but so I listed it anyway, and it sold in like 4 hours. Somebody bought it 4 hours after I listed it. I put it on Instagram. And I got a message from the person that bought it, and they were just overjoyed because it was perfect for them, you know? And so it's that connection, I think, that brings me back over and over again, is the opportunity to sort of do this expressive thing, sort of purely who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then connect with somebody else with that way. I'm not a really outgoing person. I'm not super social. But that's where I'm comfortable, and that's how I best like to connect with other people. And when it works, there's like nothing like it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else like it. So that's I think probably why I endure the the abuse of living a creative life. I mean, it's not easy, but what choice do I have, really? Mm-hmm. So
have you gathered over this time, like, is there a Lisa following out there that you've gained?
I have a small group of devoted fans. So like I set up a Patreon. I think I have 8 patrons, but I love them. It's like, I don't think people understand, like, nobody will love you like an artist will love you if you support their work. I mean, it's like, I mean, maybe like a golden retriever. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's like, but yeah, I mean, I've had, I have some people are really interested in wood carving on like Instagram and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think people come to that because they want to learn. They want to, they want some of that skill set information. Mm-hmm. But I have had over the years, I recently had somebody message me who'd been following my artwork since like the late 1990s, so it's like, oh wow, that's really amazing. Mm-hmm. That's somebody who really kind of gets what you're doing. Yeah. I don't think I don't expect to ever have a large following of my work, but if I can find like a few people who really kind of get what I'm doing, it's a very satisfying process. So yeah.
I remember it's like when I got the first real person that was like, that bought my work, that wasn't related to me or married to me, that was like the best feeling ever.
Yeah, yeah. Or yeah, right. Like when I first started on Facebook many years ago, and it was like, thanks mom for liking my post. That's like, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, it I don't know. It's I wouldn't stop
Mhm.
doing it because I'd lose my mind probably, but I can understand why people would wonder, you know, why people keep going.
Mhm.
But it's definitely about other deeper sort of soul-like needs than actual like business planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, maybe that's part of the question I was getting at, because there's like, there's creating art to create art, and maybe with no intent of anybody else ever seeing it. And then there's creating art with intent for it to go out into the world. Right. And so I
Yeah.
guess maybe that's a little bit of what the question was around, was like, and you answered it, but it's like, what about putting it out in the world is important versus just the creating of it.
Right.
And I think that connection piece is what you're saying is important.
Yeah, but I would also say that, you know, I think the fact that I got a fine arts degree kind of trained me at a young age to expect that you're making the art to put it out in the world. You know, that's sort of like a foregone conclusion of that process. You know, when you take art classes, everybody's always like offering information about your work. You have to kind of get used to having people say, why the hell did you even do it that way? You know, and so I think part of my expectation of sharing my work with others is probably part of learned in that process. But that doesn't mean that there isn't work that I do that I don't share with the world too, you know. So
I guess maybe a deeper question on it too is, if you're somebody who, like, this is kind of how you share yourself with a broader group of people, how do you not let it affect your sense of self if you get negative feedback?
yeah, that's a really hard part of it. That vulnerability is really you know, is I think that keeps a lot of people from going anywhere with their creative stuff. I think practice is, I mean, as I don't think that's that's bad advice. It doesn't sound like it, but you do get used to it. I mean, and the other thing is that you don't get one without the other.
Yeah.
So if you have to put yourself out there in a vulnerable way anytime you create something and share it with the world. And the other thing is that you just have to be convinced that you are the only real authority of your own work. And so you can listen to what other people have to say about it, but you have to learn to filter it through your own filter of what that is about for you. And most of the time, let's just say all of the time, good and bad, if somebody says something about your work, it's about them.
Mhm.
It's not you. And I also think part of what artists and creative people do for other people is provide them that canvas for them to project themselves out onto, because that's a process for them as well. But it has absolutely nothing to do with what you make or why you make it.
Right.
So,
Yep. I think,
uh,
yeah, spot on.
yeah.
We're actually getting to the end of our time together, Lisa. So
Okay.
I want to give you a chance to let people know like how they can find you and see your work.
I have a website, ninthwavedesigns.com, which is primarily for wood carving. I also, if you go to that website, it's easy to find my illustration website, which is called Tale of the Bear.
Okay.
And I also have Instagram at Ninth Wave Designs and at Tale of the Bear.
Okay.
So there's stuff on Facebook too, but they're all under the same moniker. So
Okay.
should be find them.
Excellent. And I'll include the links on all of that in the show notes. So it's easy and available for people to find. Thanks for chatting with me today.
Hey, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I had a good time. So.
All right. So again, that was Lisa Laughy. I'm going to include the links on how you can follow along with both her illustrations page and her wood carving page. You can find that in the description for today's episode. So just look in that description box on the podcast app you use, or if you're watching this on YouTube, check out the description down below. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure that you subscribe, like, and review on whatever podcast app you are using. Follow along with the podcast over on Instagram, just at Crafting a Revolution. And there you'll be able to find the links directly to watch and listen to the episodes, as well as any podcast swag that comes up or any special offers that may be going on at any given time. Plus, obviously, I post about the new episodes over there as well. And I've mentioned over the last several episodes that I have a goal. I am trying to get to 10,000 downloads in a month before the end of the year. Right now, we're averaging about 2,500. So I have a big favor to ask, and that is please share with your friends about the podcast. Let them know that it's an awesome podcast that interviews and introduces people to amazing makers from all over the world. Share out the news. This doesn't cost you anything except for a little bit of time. So if you could please do that, help spread the word about the podcast and help get us to 10,000 downloads in a month. I'm counting on you, Pod Squad. All right. This is in your court right now. All right. When I am not interviewing fantastic people and making podcast episodes, you can find me designing and making furniture and other home decor over at freemanfurnishings.com and at Freeman Furnishings across pretty much all of the social media platforms. Though I am active on a daily basis pretty regularly on Instagram and second most on TikTok. So if you want to hit up those two places at Freeman Furnishings, you can kind of see there what I am up to. All right, it's the middle of the week. I hope you're having a great week so far. And as always, let's go craft a revolution. She, her, them, they got something they want to say. Solution for the toxic